Hello everyone, my name is Daisy and today we're going to be taking a look at these Ohuhu watercolor paper pads. I have here with me the cold press and there's about 30 sheets and this is the A4 size. It's about 300 grams, so 140 pounds, and it's 100% cotton top. So it is acid free. So what I mean by cotton top, it means that the top layers are cotton and then the inner layers are different material. So basically, it's 100% cotton top layer plus wood pulp base. And then it has like a middle of absorbency core. Um, but what this does is that's basically creating a more affordable watercolor paper pad. For this video, I got inspired by the boba shop that you guys saw earlier in the intro. And I thought it was a really cute place. I really love the colors, the vibrancy. I love the mood of the whole space. And for me, I don't know about you guys, but boba is legit one of my favorite drinks. I do not play around when it comes to my boba. Inside the boba shop, there were a few claw machines with stuffies, and I really wanted the capybara stuffy, but after so many attempts of trying to get him, it was just not possible. But here I was able to sketch him out, paint him, the whole shebang. And yeah, I really ended up loving this little illustration. I think I want to make it into like a larger painting, and just change it up a bit. I think I want to include like more colors to it. But yeah, next time around, I definitely want to. I think I want to do an oil painting, but I'm not sure yet. We will see. I feel like that'll be like months from now. But I definitely want to turn this into a larger scale painting and add more details. I definitely really like the softness of this painting. I thought I executed it very well. And for today's topic of the day, we are discussing you don't need expensive art supplies, which is you kind of do, but you also kind of don't. Partially as a beginner, you really don't need expensive art supplies. I feel like when you're starting to get used to a new medium, there's sort of this learning curve and it takes quite a bit of time. So it's a lot better to get like the cheaper stuff. Um, but also, if you're just somebody who's into the arts, but just as a hobby, you also don't need the expensive stuff. It is really nice, but not needed. Um, but in the longer run, I think that's like when you start to get into the more pricier stuff, just because it starts to being like your career or part of your work, or maybe you want to get into a gallery, especially if you want to get into a gallery or start selling your work. You definitely do need to get the more expensive art supplies, for example, canvas and paint because of the archival part of it. Um, I don't know if you guys know this, but you can technically put a painting down as collateral, and a lot of people do this, so that's kind of why they want the archival painting. And then for the more affordable art materials, if you're somebody who's just an illustrator and you're going to be converting your artwork into digital form, for example, like a coloring book, maybe a picture book, maybe it's something like a poster, but that's when you can like use the more affordable art materials because they're going to be converted to digital format, and that's when you really don't need the expensive stuff. So for example, this little illustration right here, this is going to be converted into a much larger scale painting, so I wouldn't need the archival part of it, and I don't need this to be like the most spectacular painting or little illustration that I ever created because it's going to be converted into something else. Ohuhu has definitely been one of my favorite brands so far for this year, basically because I've known Ohuhu for quite a while, but in the beginning they were more of like that dupe of a Copic markers sort of brand. They were just like a dupe for another brand. But then later on, like especially the recent years, they've really brought up like their affordability, but also like the quality of their art supplies. They're like way better than Copics now. They're surpassing like a lot of these brands that have been around for years. So Huhu has definitely been my favorite brand so far out of this year. I really love all the art supplies that they have sent me, and I constantly use them. Ohuhu has such a variety of art mediums and art supplies. They have so much from you to like choose from. So if you ever get the chance, definitely do go check them out and just browse around their website, see what you find. Because again, they're really affordable and they have really high quality art supplies there. And because of how expensive like most art supplies are, I tend to wait around to like Black Friday or like Amazon Prime Day, something like that, to buy all my art supplies and just, stock up on stuff that I need throughout the year. So I definitely haven't purchased much this year. I think I just got a few pens here and there, but that was about it. Um, but yeah, art supplies can get really expensive, especially like when you're trying different mediums out. It just can get really pricey. And here in this little illustration that I'm doing, I decided to add some color pencils. I decided to work it a little bit more and refine like certain parts of that stuffy. I almost overdid it. I almost overdid it with the color pencils, but ended up turning out really good. I think I'll try this probably again, and I really love the color of the line art too. A lot of artists they like to use cold press paper to do a really nice bleed through or wet on wet technique. For me, I like using my hot press paper because it has less texture, but it is also able to do the same thing as a cold press paper. As you can see here, I get those really nice soft edges, but I also get those hard edges as well. And Ohuhu was kind enough to send me these lovely acrylic markers. I really enjoyed using these ones. I definitely need more colors though. 36 was not enough for me. But here I have the cold press paper with 20 sheets, and here are all the beautiful colors. Please remember to read every instruction when using acrylic markers because every brand has their own unique way of starting off the acrylic markers. And what I love about this acrylic marker is that the cap really matches the color that you get inside of the acrylic marker. They are perfectly matched, and I love when Ohuhu does that. I feel like they're really good at like seeing the little details and like really thinking about their whole branding, really thinking about like the packaging and the body of the markers. They designed it so well. It was really comfortable to use. And one thing that I noticed is how flexible the nib was. I really enjoyed that it was really flexible. What else could I say? I don't know. For this part, I think this is where I messed up because I used the wrong purple and I was supposed to use a different color, and that's why it looks so gray here. Um, I definitely think the vibrancy definitely needed to be punched up a bit. So I think I'm going to turn this into digitally and do a little animation. But what I love most about this illustration is the bunnies. I really love the boa bunnies. And I think that's about it. I think that was like the only thing that I liked from here was the boba bunnies. But yeah, I definitely do need more colors. I think Ohuhu does a really great job of having a really nice solid color palette. This was my first time using acrylic markers, so I'm not that great at it, but hopefully I get better. What I have noticed so far is that usually acrylic markers tend to be like beginner friendly because it's a mixture of drawing and painting at the same time. So for anyone who has yet to try acrylic markers, definitely don't get scared to try them out because there's not much of a learning curve here. Just a tad bit, but not too much. I would say it's probably one of those mediums that you can easily get into, and it's for much smaller scale paintings rather than large scale paintings. Both the hot press and cold press come in 20 or the 30 sheet paper size. It depends on what you're looking for. For this cold press paper, I wanted to test it out with these acrylic markers. I wanted to see how much it could handle, and I also wanted to see if the marker will cause the paper to start rubbing off some of that top layer. And turns out this cold press paper can handle quite a lot of paint. There was no signs of bleed through, no signs of tears from that top layer. It was working really beautifully, and I really enjoyed using the texture with these acrylic markers, which I usually don't enjoy much texture. But for this case, I really loved the look of it. What stood out to me the most for the hot press and the cold press paper was that top layer, that surface. It really doesn't budge when you're trying to do those different techniques with watercolor, and especially when you're trying to remove pigment from that top layer just in case you mess up. You know what? Oftentimes with other watercolor paper pads or paper, they tend to tear from that top surface layer because of all that friction. But with these ones, that top layer really holds it down. I normally don't like to use cold press paper because of the texture and also the dry time of the cold press paper. It just takes way too long for those layers to dry, especially when you're doing wet on wet techniques. But I found it that with both of these papers, the dry time is about 1 minute, which is almost nothing compared to even the most expensive like Archer's watercolor paper pads, where you're waiting there for about like 10 minutes for your layers to dry. Yes, you can use a hair dryer to lessen the drying time, but I like the watercolor to do its own thing. And this is how both of the illustrations turned out. I hope you enjoyed this video. You can check out more of Ohuhu's products down in the link below, and I will see you next time.